Ron Kaufman, thank you for coming to the World Wealth Conference here in Singapore, and author, columnist, keynote speaker.
Glad to be here with you. Thanks, Perry.
Yeah, I have to say it's an honor, and not just for me, but for the many people that have been listening to you. And indeed, I was listening to a local personality, Richard Tan, talk about his great influences. And when your name came up, I tell you what, this man was on the verge of tears. So your influence is wide and highly respected.
Well, thank you. Richard's a dear friend over many, many years.
Yes.
He has served many people very well.
Yeah, absolutely. You both have. So welcome here, and let's crack on. So you talked on a couple of subjects here at the conference, and so I wanted to touch on one of those subjects. Generically, how does a company go about building good customer service, and why is that important?
Well, why it's important first, because there's so much commoditization, there's globalization, there's competition, there's convergence in various industries. So the differentiation from the competition requires standing out in some way. I've defined service as taking action to create value for someone else. So if you are on par with other companies, but you find a way to take some action that creates greater value, that is therefore better service, you can stand out and win.
Fantastic. Okay. And taking that one step further, going on to your subjects as they continue, how can an organization increase value by supercharging results? What does that mean? How does it happen?
Great. Well, let's go back to the definition. If service is taking action to create value for someone else, the definition actually doesn't begin with the action you take, because the action you take is to create value. But who gets the value? It's the someone else. It's how well you understand someone else, understand your customer, your clients, your segmentation, etc. So you can figure out what they value now and what they would value in the future, and therefore you can then determine what actions to take. Now, different people value different things. Some people may want the latest and greatest product. Some people may want the cheapest price. Some people may want the fastest delivery. Some people may say, I want to be able to take my time. Some people say, I want all of the personal touch. Other people say, that's not important to me. So figuring out what it is that someone else values and then aligning your organization to differentiate based on creating more value in that category is a key for a company to be able to become stronger, better, and build a better reputation.
Right, so differentiation is a very strong factor in there. And how does one go about that? You know, you're in an organization. Myself, I run a recruitment organization, so there's 150 recruitment organizations similar to mine in Singapore. Right. How do you differentiate?
Well, the fourth category, which you didn't mention, we got one which is the quality of the product. In your case, as a recruitment agency, it would be the people, the talent that you're actually able to get. The second category is called the delivery system. So can I go online and easily interact with you, or do we have to do this by phone, or do we do a meeting? And if I need 24/7 service, even on Sunday, are you there for? That's delivery. Service mindset, I take it you're a nice guy, but so are your competitors, right? So then the fourth category is called ongoing relationship. To what extent do you actually understand what your clients are looking to achieve, so that you're proactively there supporting them, bringing them new talent, understanding the direction of their company, so that you're able to look at the talent pool, help them with their recruitment needs, even perhaps before they come in and make a request of you. Yeah?
Absolutely. So continuous engagement and being there
in helping them achieve their goals.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So how would you describe in a nutshell your concepts around corporation building in the areas of service, leadership, culture, and roadmaps?
Right. How does an organization, a large organization, hundreds, maybe thousands of employees, actually build a culture? So I created an architectural model to help answer this question. The foundation, the base of the house, if you will, is teaching people the principles, tools, practices of service that none of us learned in school. We learned math and science and geography, but we didn't learn what does it actually mean to serve somebody else. And yet all of us go to work and we suddenly find ourselves needing to take action that creates value, which is service. So being able to provide that level of education, workshop time, etc., that's a foundation. The roof of the house is leadership behaviors, role modeling of the leaders, because the roof has to provide protection for the culture. And inside is what I call the building blocks. So these are things like, who do you recruit? What's the onboarding orientation experience for them that hooks them into the culture? How do you reward and recognize people for actually delivering better service externally as well as internally? How do you capture voice of customer? What are you measuring? What do you do when things go wrong? There are these 12 areas, I call them the 12 building blocks of service culture. So for a large organization, executing on that, you don't snap your fingers and build a house. You need a roadmap that allows you to either remodel what you've got or construct what it is you actually want to build. And that's what our company, Up Your Service, actually does.
A fantastic name as well, I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on a more controversial topic because I really wanted to gather a thought leader's opinion about this. But the current trending tsunami, particularly in the USA and Europe and the UK, where I'm originally from as well, is relating around corporate culture and leadership and the issues around sexual harassment, particularly of women, and the culture of fear to speak up when they're victims, for fear of losing their jobs, damaging their careers. And now that seems to be changing with the exposure of politicians losing their jobs, or corporate executives, or even media personalities, or even film personalities being now exposed. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I have a 21-year-old daughter. You have a 23-year-old daughter.
Indeed.
And I think that we are on the threshold of an era where women's voices in particular have needed to come out and play full on at the table and leading the table, right? So we already know the statistics that when you have more women on a board, the company ends up being more successful and profitable. That's just statistically proven. And yet we don't yet have the practices, right? So I think that this issue around harassment and the exposure of that and the changing fundamental practices and standards of what's going to be acceptable and what's not is a step in the right direction. The right direction being a much more overall inclusive society, an inclusive capitalist economy, an inclusive political landscape where people, regardless of their sex, their gender, or their sexual orientation, are able to contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversity is a big issue as well, and certainly a lot of corporations are building that into their culture, which is obviously fantastic as well.
Not only companies, but also countries. We're seeing
Yes.
entire countries passing legislation that is you think of it 100 years ago, not even possible to consider. 20 years ago, it wasn't the law, and like that, things change.
Very true. And do you feel that what's happening in the West, in Australia and Europe and America, can be translated into Asian cultures?
I think it will. In the same way that certain practices in terms of media, in terms of education, in terms of entertainment, in terms of dining, I mean, a global culture is developing. Now, that doesn't mean that we all need to be homogenous. It is a pluralistic world. And so this sense of appreciation and mutual respect really needs to predominate. Mutual respect for one another.
Fantastic. So what's one piece of advice would you offer to any startup organization looking to venture out into the world with their organization to focus on to succeed?
Right. Remember the definition of service, taking action to create value for someone else. Keep your focus on the someone else. Learn about what they value now, think about what they'll value in the future, then design your action steps to be able to create that value. Interestingly, that puts you in the position of being the value creator. So the person in service is not the slave. It's actually the person that generates the value that makes any startup company or large corporation successful.
Fantastic. And for the leaders of the future, what's one or two key pieces of advice would you offer them? Maybe pieces of advice that you have followed to lead them to success.
Well, there are two things. One is the whole issue of authenticity, that I think the world today has become so overwhelmed with artificiality. Yeah, just to get the clicks and get the likes and make things, slapping the advertising and enough. It's no longer really appealing. And so authenticity is going to reign. And when you mentioned Richard Tan at the very beginning here, he was so authentic on stage that everybody in the audience was completely moved. The other is the issue of personal transformation. So we've seen the evolution from product to services, but I think the next level of development is actually providing the kinds of things that enable people to evolve themselves, to transform themselves. I give you an example. I was at a resort that we work with recently, and they, of course, have beautiful facilities, and they've got, for example, a bar where you have all the different drinks. But if you go there and you learn about rum, it happened to be Mauritius, and you learn the scents and the flavors and which came from sugarcane and how was this done, et cetera, and you leave, you've had an enjoyable vacation, but your relationship with rum will be different for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Now, I realize that's an alcohol example, and in some parts of the world it's not the example to use, but it transforms the person, not just entertains them.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, really appreciate your time. Ron Kaufman, thank you very much.
Thank you.